I gotta say, I think I have a new burst of confidence after last week. 7-0, which included calling the upsets of Miami and Texas, which I did have some people doubting in the comment section, which I have no problem with. People will pick what they want to pick. But I think last week was much needed after a very abysmal week one. As week one is always really good for me or really bad. And I was surprised to go 7-0. I thought I had at least one wrong pick for last week, but all 7 of them were correct, and I'm happy. But unfortunately, I'm only as good as my next week. And I'm going to be honest, these matchups, they do not really look appealing compared to last week and even next week, as next week's matchups exciting. The 7 matchups I will be predicting this week: Penn State, Illinois, LSU, Mississippi State, South Carolina, Georgia, San Diego State, Oregon State, Minnesota, North Carolina, Washington, Michigan State, and Tennessee and Florida. Before I get to my picks, I do want to say I have a new top 25 heading into week 3. I will put it in the comments section and I will pin it. I've also put it on X, which is Twitter. So if you follow my X/Twitter page, you will see it. Without further ado, let's get to the week 3 college football predictions. Our first matchup on the docket this week, number 7 Penn State and Illinois. For Penn State, quarterback Drew Aller has had high expectations coming into the season. As Penn State, they are looking to get over the hump that they are currently trying to get over to be that top team in the Big Ten East, getting past Michigan and Ohio State. As for years, we've wondered, could this be the year that Penn State could finally get past Ohio State and Michigan and win the Big Ten East for the first time since 2016? Penn State, they're off to a strong start this season. I do get that their opponents have been West Virginia and Delaware. But Penn State is 10th in total defense, 5th in time of possession. They're 14th in total offense, 6th in scoring offense, averaging 50.5 points per game so far this season. So they're making their possessions count. And they go on the road to take on Illinois, a team that I anticipated was going to have a step back from last season. As Illinois, they lost quite a bit of big-time players from last season. And Illinois so far is 105th in scoring defense and 125th in total defense. And I do get that it is college football and anything can happen any given week. Any game that feels like it's the simplest game could easily be a trap game, but I just can't see it here. I just think there's too much talent on the Penn State offense, and I think they win this game. The last time they played Illinois pulled off the stunner in Happy Valley, but I just can't see an upset this time around. But there's been surprises before. Next matchup on the docket this week, number 14 LSU and Mississippi State. Now this could be a trap game for LSU, mainly because Mississippi State is a pretty tough environment to play in, as they ring the cowbells from start to finish. LSU, they are 11th in passing offense so far this season, averaging 333 passing yards per game. They have only accumulated 4 penalties in the first 2 games this season, which is tied for the fewest in the FBS with Air Force and Colorado State. And they are 8th in total offense. While Mississippi State, they are 20th in rushing offense. Jaquavius Marks leads the SEC in rushing yards. And I think the running game for Mississippi State is what is going to have to be the equalizer if they're going to win this game. As Mississippi State, they are abandoning the air raid and becoming more of a run first kind of offense. Mississippi State, I feel like they are the Iowa State of the SEC. A team that, based off of records and history books, an average team. But they pull off an occasional upset when you're least expecting it. Do I think it happens here? I don't think so. Despite this being a road game, Starkville being a very hostile environment to play in, with the cowbell start to finish, just harassing you, I still think LSU gets it done. And I do think that there was a lot of overreactions to the Week 1 game against Florida State, as I do remember making a statement about how there's no reason to think that whoever lost between LSU and Florida State couldn't run the table and make the college football playoff. Florida State, I feel like they are in the driver's seat to make the college football playoff, as I cannot see any team on the schedule for Florida State beating them. As Florida State is a juggernaut this season, and LSU, they were holding their own in the game. It's just that they could have been up by a lot more going into the half in that game, and momentum could have changed. So I think the loss of Florida State does not define LSU season at all, despite some people that I saw on X, which is Twitter, talking about how Brian Kelly's overrated and how he always has a history of a quarterback having a year or two slump. I at least don't think a slump happens here. If it does happen, I think the Tigers win. Our next matchup, South Carolina and number 1 Georgia. The big question here, does South Carolina have a chance to pull off this monumental upset? Always. There's always a chance. It's college football for a reason. The next question is, what can South Carolina do? What's an equalizer for them to win this game? Asserting to their strengths, which so far their strength is the passing game, as they are third in the FBS in passing offense, averaging 408 passing yards per game. Can the offensive line protect quarterback Spencer Rattler? As South Carolina's offensive line has given up 10 sacks so far this season, 5 per game, which is 129th in the FBS. The first 2 games of the year for Georgia, with Carson Beck under center, is off to a strong start. They're averaging 343 passing yards per game, which is 9th in FBS. The defense, once again strong. Second in scoring defense, only allowing an average of 5 points per game. They are 17th in total defense, only giving up an average of 242 yards per game. South Carolina is the toughest opponent that Georgia has faced so far this season, as they've played Tennessee, Martin, and Ball State so far. And looking at the schedule for Georgia, South Carolina is Georgia's toughest opponent for the next month. And I'm going to pick Georgia to win this game. I just can't see South Carolina making this game close. Although they can, it's college football for a reason, and we have seen chaotic things happen in the past, but not this time. I just think that Georgia is too disciplined of a team. They are too well of a coached team to lose to a team like South Carolina, that there is struggles in the offensive line, as we saw in the North Carolina game in week 1. I think Georgia wins this big. Next matchup, San Diego State and Oregon State. And I know that this matchup isn't very exciting. At least it's not as exciting as it could be. But I just want to talk about Oregon State. as Oregon State is a team that I am very high on this season. As Oregon State, they were a quarterback away from being 10-2 to potentially 11-1 last season. And now they have a quarterback in DJ Uiagalelei, who's off to a phenomenal start for the Beavers. Oregon State's 14th in rushing offense so far this season, and they are 10th in scoring offense, averaging 48.5 points per game. So a top 10 scoring offense for Oregon State. And the Pac-12 as a whole so far is off to a really strong start, as there are currently 8 teams in the Pac-12 that are in the top 25. And they take on San Diego State, does Oregon State, a team that they're looking to bounce back from their loss to UCLA last week, but I just think it's going to be more the same for the Aztecs. And I think Oregon State wins this game big. As San Diego State, I do not think they have the ability to extend drives, as they are 109th in the FBS in third down conversion percentage. And I think DJ Uiagalelei and the Oregon State offense, they have another phenomenal week as they continue to fly under the radar. Next matchup, Minnesota and number 20 North Carolina. For Minnesota, can they dictate the pace of the game? They are 9th in time of possession, and I will be honest, I do find that a little bit surprising, even though Minnesota in years past, they've been towards the top in time of possession. They've been known to be a run-heavy team, pound the rock. But considering there were reports coming into the season about how Minnesota wants to change their offensive style of play by becoming more of a pass-first team. And I do remember talking about it when predicting the Nebraska-Minnesota game for week 1, if you remember, that the reports, they made sense considering towards the end of last season, Athan Kaliakmanis was throwing the ball a bit more than what we're used to seeing a Minnesota quarterback typically throw. Minnesota's defense so far this season, pretty strong. 10th in scoring defense, only giving up 8 points per game on average. 8th in total defense, only giving up an average of 223.5 yards per game. But this is going to be a big test for Minnesota, going up against an offense led by Drake May, who is right now projected to be the second quarterback taken in April's NFL draft, only behind Caleb Williams. But North Carolina, they have a strong running game too. Omarion Hampton, he's 5th in the FBS in rushing yards, and he also has 5 rushing touchdowns this season. They are 9th in rushing offense, averaging 243.5 rushing yards per game, which I could see North Carolina easily being able to match Minnesota's game. I do think this game could potentially be kind of a lower scoring game based off of Minnesota having to dictate the pace of the game to stay in it, and how well North Carolina has ran the ball so far this season. But can Minnesota's defense rise to the occasion on third down? As North Carolina, they are 5th in third down conversion percentage. I'm going to go with the better offense in this game, and I'm going with North Carolina. I do think this is a big test for Minnesota. As Minnesota, I do feel like they are an underrated team, but I just think that North Carolina's offense is going to be too strong in this matchup, even though Minnesota's defense has gotten off to a strong start this season. Number 8, Washington and Michigan State. Already distractions for Michigan State. Head coach Mel Tucker has been relieved of his duties after accusations of harassment and inappropriate behavior. Harlan Barnett, Michigan State's longtime secondary coach, has been named the interim head coach. And Mark D'Antonio is also going to be returning as an associate head coach, helping out Michigan State for the rest of the year. So with this distraction looming on Michigan State, how are they going to pull out this upset against a top 10 team in Washington? Well, their defense would be a good start. Can their defense stay in the game? As Michigan State's defense has been strong so far, they're third in team sacks, 16th in scoring defense, giving up an average of 10.5 points per game, and they're fifth in total defense, only allowing an average of 206 yards per game. Running back Nate Carter leads the Big Ten in rushing yards, and he'll have to be a big factor in this game if Michigan State pulls off this upset. As it'd be in Michigan State's best interest to utilize Nate Carter, try to pound the rock, try to extend drives, keep the Washington offense cold on the sidelines, and more often than not, when an offense is on the sidelines for so long, they look out of sync and they get frustrated. Washington offensively, they are first in passing offense, averaging 472 passing yards per game. They're sixth in total offense. Michael Penix Jr. is fourth in the FBS in passing yards, and they're eighth in scoring offense, scoring an average of 49.5 points per game. Something has to give in this matchup. Michigan State's defense has had a strong start to the year, but Washington's offense hasn't skipped a beat since last season. And I'm going to go with Washington. I get that Michigan State's defense is off to that strong start, but Washington's defense is just as good, if not better than Michigan State's. As coming into the season, Washington was predicted to have the best defense in the Pac-12. And with this strong offense to complement that, it's why in the preseason I picked Washington to win the Pac-12, and why I have Washington making the college football playoff. Although I do think now that fourth playoff spot is going to come down to Washington, Florida State, Notre Dame, possibly even Ohio State. But with the distractions right now in Michigan State, even without the distractions, I would still pick Washington to win this game. As I just think Washington's offense is going to be too much. Our final matchup on the docket this week, number 11 Tennessee goes on the road to the Swamp to take on Florida. And I am sensing this could be a potential trap game. I'm expecting Tennessee to win. I think Tennessee's going to win. However, I would not be surprised if Florida pull off the upset, as I truly believe they have a strong chance of pulling off this upset. Florida is 110th in third down conversion percentage. Not good at all. However, Tennessee is not much better. They're 108th in third down conversion percentage. If Florida can win the battle on third down, a strong chance of pulling off the upset. They are second in first down defense. If they can make some stops on early downs, force Tennessee to play behind the chains, use the crowd to their advantage, as they are going to be screaming and shouting all night long. They're going to be fired up for this game. They are third in total defense, only giving up an average of 191 yards per game. Florida had a very difficult time stopping Utah in the first half in week 1. However, the second half, they had slight improvements. Tennessee is fourth in rushing offense, averaging about 258 rushing yards per game. Joe Milton is a quarterback that I am sold on for the rest of the season. And if Tennessee can win this game on the road against Florida in what is a potential trap game, even though I'm expecting Tennessee to win, I'm picking them to win. I think it's going to be proof that Tennessee last season was not a one-season wonder. In fact, I think Tennessee is going to win at least 10 games this season. I think there's that much talent on their offense this year. And they go up against Graham Mertz for Florida, who I think is one of, if not the most inconsistent quarterback in college football. As Graham Mertz throughout his career, he has had positive moments and negative moments, but unfortunately, he's had more negative moments. And a win against Tennessee, pulling off the upset against a top 12 team in the country, that'd be a confidence booster, and that would be a very big moment for Graham Mertz. But I just don't see it happening. I'm picking Tennessee to win, but at the same time, I would not be shocked if Florida won and pulled off the upset. And I really feel bad here picking all 7 favorites this week, but this just feels like one of those weeks where it feels like all the favorites win. Although I will be honest, I do not think I'm going to go 7-0 again this week. I think I have at least 1 or 2 wrong here, as I do think 1 or 2 of these will happen to be a trap game. But thank you for tuning in. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. And if there was a game, or should I say if there is a game that I did not predict here today that you'd like my thoughts on, please leave it in the comment section, and I will respond to you. Until next time, have a wonderful day. Enjoy the college football this Saturday if I do not see you in the comment section for the NFL Week 2 predictions.